Kim Woo pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the stars streak past like silver ribbons. His hands shook a little as he held his tourist visa. The plastic card had cost him 3 years of savings, but it was worth it. He was going to see things that most humans could only dream about. The Galactic Heritage Museum on Kepler Station was famous across the galaxy. It held artifacts from the Vorthak Empire, the ancient rulers who had vanished 5,000 years ago. For most of galactic history, only the older alien races were allowed to visit. Humans were too new, too young, too primitive. But last year, the Galactic Council had finally opened the museum to all species. Wu was 28 years old and worked in a small electronics shop on Earth. He had never been anywhere exciting in his life. When he saw the advertisement for museum tours, he knew he had to go. His friends thought he was crazy to spend so much money, but Wu did not care. This was his chance to see real alien history. The transport ship docked at Kepler Station with a soft thud. Wu grabbed his small bag and followed the other passengers off the ship. The station was huge, bigger than any building on Earth. The walls were made of some kind of metal that seemed to glow from within. Alien beings walked everywhere, talking in languages that Wu could not understand. At the museum entrance, a tall blue alien checked their tickets. The alien had 6 arms and wore a uniform covered in golden symbols. Its voice sounded like music when it spoke. "Welcome to the Galactic Heritage Museum. I am Veltar, your guide today. Please stay with the group and do not touch anything without permission." Wu looked around at the other tourists. There were about 20 beings in the group. Most were aliens from the older civilizations. The Xanthari looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Their scales were dark green and their eyes were bright yellow. They stood very straight and proud like soldiers. The Nexari were shorter but had large heads with huge brains visible under their clear skulls. They carried small computers and were always calculating something. They looked at the humans like they were studying insects. The Luminar were the most beautiful aliens Wu had ever seen. They were tall and thin with skin that changed colors like rainbows. They moved like they were dancing, and everything they did looked like art. Then there were the humans. Only 5 humans were in the group, including Wu. The others were richer tourists who could afford these trips easily. They wore expensive clothes and had the latest translation devices. Wu had only a basic translator that he had bought used. The other aliens ignored the humans completely. When they talked, they acted like the humans were not there. Wu heard one Xanthari say to another, "I do not know why they let these primitives in here. Humans have only been in space for a few decades." Veltar led the group through the first hall. The ceiling was so high that Wu could barely see the top. Floating displays showed holographic images of the Vorthak Empire at its peak. Thousands of worlds under one rule. Ships bigger than cities. Technology that seemed like magic. The Vorthak ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years, Veltar explained. They were the greatest civilization that ever existed. Their technology was far beyond anything we have today. When they vanished 5,000 years ago, they left behind only ruins and mysteries. They walked through halls filled with Vorthak artifacts, strange machines that hummed with energy, weapons that could destroy entire planets, art that moved and changed as you watched it. Wu tried to take pictures, but the camera could not capture the way the objects seemed to glow with inner light. The Xanthari tourists nodded knowingly at each display. They had studied Vorthak history for centuries. The Nexari scanned everything with their computers, trying to understand how the technology worked. The Luminar created their own art inspired by what they saw. The humans just stared in wonder. "Your species is very young," Veltar said to the humans as they walked. "You cannot truly appreciate what you are seeing. The Vorthak were building star empires when your ancestors were still living in caves." Wu felt his face turn red, but he said nothing. He knew Veltar was right. Humans were new to space travel. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Most aliens still thought of them as children playing with toys they did not understand. After 2 hours of walking, they reached the most important part of the museum. Veltar stopped in front of huge metal doors covered in symbols that seemed to move on their own. "Beyond these doors is the throne chamber," Veltar announced. "Inside is the actual throne of the last Vorthak emperor. It has been empty for 5,000 years. Many have tried to sit on it, but the throne will only respond to true Vorthak blood. Since the Vorthak are gone, it will remain forever silent." The doors opened with a deep rumbling sound. The group walked into a circular room with walls that reached up into darkness. In the center of the room sat the throne. Wu had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying. The throne was made of black stone that reflected light like water. Patterns of energy flowed across its surface in spirals and curves. The patterns moved slowly like living things. The throne was surrounded by floating screens showing alien text and star maps. The throne is protected by energy barriers, Veltar said. No one may approach closer than 10 meters. The Vorthak built it to recognize only their own genetic pattern. For 5,000 years, every major leader in the galaxy has tried to activate it. Centauri emperors, Nexari high computers, Luminar art masters, all have failed. The aliens in the group took their pictures and listened to Veltar explain the throne's history. They talked about how advanced the Vorthak had been and how sad it was that such greatness was lost forever. But Wu was not listening to the guide. He was staring at the throne, and something strange was happening. The energy patterns on the throne's surface were moving faster when he looked at them. The swirling lines seemed to respond to his gaze, brightening and spinning quicker whenever he focused on them. Wu blinked and looked away, then looked back. The patterns definitely changed when he watched them. It was like the throne knew he was there. He looked around to see if anyone else noticed, but the other tourists were listening to Veltar talk about Vorthak architecture. The aliens were taking notes and asking technical questions. No one was paying attention to Wu or the throne's strange behavior. Wu moved slightly to his left, staying within the group, but getting a different angle on the throne. The energy pattern shifted to follow his movement. Lines of light that had been flowing upward now curved toward where he stood. It was subtle, but it was definitely happening. His heart started beating faster. What did this mean? Why was the throne reacting to him? He was just a human, a primitive newcomer to the galaxy. There was no way an ancient alien artifact should care about his presence. The tour continued for another hour. Veltar showed them smaller Vorthak artifacts and explained the Empire's fall. According to the official history, the Vorthak had simply vanished one day. Their ships were found empty, their cities abandoned. No one knew where they had gone or why they left, but Wu was barely listening. His mind kept returning to the throne and the way it had responded to him. He had to know more. He had to understand what it meant. When the tour ended, Veltar led the group back to the main entrance. The other tourists headed to the gift shop or the cafeteria. Some were already planning to catch transport ships back to their homeworlds. Wu pretended to go with them, but as soon as no one was watching, he slipped away from the group. The museum was huge, with dozens of halls and passages. It would be easy to get lost, but Wu had memorized the way back to the throne chamber. He had to see the throne again. He had to know if what he had experienced was real. Something was calling to him, and he had to answer. Wu waited in the museum cafeteria until most of the tourists had left. The lunch rush was busy with aliens eating strange foods and talking in dozens of different languages. Security guards walked around, but they seemed relaxed. No one expected trouble in a museum. After an hour, Wu made his move. He walked casually through the halls, pretending to study the displays. Whenever he saw a guard or museum worker, he acted like a lost tourist looking for the bathroom. His heart pounded, but he kept walking. The museum was quieter now. Most tour groups had finished for the day. The halls that had been crowded earlier were now almost empty. Wu's footsteps echoed on the metal floors as he made his way back to the throne chamber. When he reached the huge doors, they were still open. A small security drone floated near the entrance, but it was facing the other direction. Wu slipped inside and pressed himself against the wall. The throne chamber was empty except for him. Emergency lighting had dimmed the room, but the throne still glowed with its own inner light. The energy patterns moved across its surface like slow lightning. Without the crowd of tourists, Wu could see the throne clearly for the first time. It was even more beautiful than he had remembered. The black stone seemed to contain entire galaxies of swirling stars. The patterns of light flowed in complex designs that hurt his eyes if he stared too long. Floating screens around the throne showed alien text that changed constantly, like a computer running programs he could not understand. But what amazed Wu most was how the throne reacted to his presence. As soon as he stepped into the chamber, the energy patterns began moving faster. The light grew brighter. The floating screens flickered and changed, showing new symbols and star maps. Wu walked closer to the energy barrier that surrounded the throne. Warning signs in a dozen languages told visitors to stay back. The barrier hummed with power, designed to keep everyone at least 10 meters away from the throne. But as Wu approached, something impossible happened. The energy barrier began to flicker. Parts of it became transparent, then solid again. It was like the barrier was fighting with itself, unable to decide whether to keep Wu out or let him through. Wu reached out his hand toward the barrier. Where his fingers came close, the energy field sparked and twisted. It did not hurt him, but it clearly was not working properly. The barrier that had kept out emperors and generals for 5,000 years was failing, because one human tourist was standing near it. He should have left. He should have run back to his hotel room and pretended this never happened. But something was pulling him forward. The throne was calling to him in a way he could not explain or resist. Wu stepped through the flickering barrier. Alarms should have sounded. Security should have rushed in. But nothing happened. The barrier closed behind him, solid again, as if it had never been broken. Now Wu stood only 3 meters from the throne. This close, he could see details that had been hidden from the tour group. The black stone was not really black, but contained every color that had ever existed. The energy patterns were not random, but formed complex mathematical equations that described the movement of stars and planets. The floating screens showed him star maps of the entire galaxy. He could see trade routes, political boundaries, and resource locations. Somehow, even though the text was in an alien language, Wu understood what he was looking at. The information flowed into his mind like water into a cup, one step closer. The patterns on the throne spun faster, creating spirals of light that reached toward him. The air around the throne felt warm and welcoming, like coming home after a long journey. Another step. Now Wu could feel power radiating from the throne like heat from a fire. It was not threatening or dangerous. It felt like recognition, like the throne had been waiting for him specifically. The final step brought him right to the throne. Up close, he could see that it was not really made of stone, but of some material that existed between solid and energy. The seat looked comfortable, designed for someone exactly his size. Without thinking about consequences or danger, without considering what this might mean for himself or the galaxy, Kim Wu sat down on the 5,000-year-old alien throne. The universe exploded around him. Light brighter than any star filled the chamber. The throne's energy patterns erupted in brilliant displays that covered every surface. The floating screens multiplied until hundreds of them surrounded Wu, showing him information faster than his mind could process. But somehow, he understood all of it. Images flashed through his consciousness. The rise of the Vorthak Empire, their conquest of the galaxy, their technology that could reshape matter and bend space, their art, their culture, their philosophy of ruling through strength and wisdom. He saw the Vorthak themselves, tall beings that looked almost human, but moved with impossible grace. They had built the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. For 10,000 years they had brought peace and order to countless worlds, but then came the knowledge that changed everything. The Vorthak had not vanished. They had evolved beyond physical existence, ascending to a higher dimension where they existed as pure energy and thought. But before they left, they had done something incredible in secret. They had planted their genetic template across hundreds of worlds, hiding it in the DNA of primitive species. The template would lie dormant for millennia, waiting for the right conditions to activate. The chosen species would develop under harsh circumstances that would forge them into the perfect inheritors of Vorthak knowledge and power. Earth had been one of those worlds. Humans were not newcomers to the galaxy. They were the Vorthak's chosen children, bred and shaped over millions of years to carry on their legacy. Wu gasped as this knowledge filled his mind. Every human carried Vorthak DNA. Every human could potentially access their technology. But most humans had been exposed to other galactic civilizations, their genetic patterns contaminated by alien influences. Only humans who had grown up on Earth, isolated from galactic society, could make the full connection. The throne showed him more. Hidden Vorthak installations throughout the galaxy, dormant for 5,000 years but now responding to his presence. Shipyards and empty star systems beginning to power up, defense networks coming online, ancient computers awakening and sending signals across space. And with the knowledge came responsibility. The throne was not just a symbol of power. It was a test. Every species that had tried to sit on it had failed because they approached it with thoughts of conquest and domination. The throne required something different. It required someone who would use power to serve others, not to rule them. The Vorthak had learned this lesson too late. Their empire had grown too large, too rigid, too focused on control. In their final years, they had realized that true leadership meant teaching others to lead themselves. This was why they had hidden their legacy in younger species, rather than passing it directly to their successors. Wu felt the weight of this knowledge settling on his shoulders. The throne was offering him the power to rule the galaxy, but only if he could prove he was worthy of it. The test was not about strength or intelligence. It was about character. As he sat there absorbing centuries of Vorthak wisdom, alarms finally began to sound throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. Security forces rushed toward the throne chamber. But they were too late to stop what had already begun. The awakening signal had been sent. Every government in the galaxy was receiving the same message, transmitted simultaneously across thousands of communication networks. The Vorthak heir has awakened. The time of reclamation begins. On Earth, humans working with electronics began to notice strange phenomena. Computers showed displays they had never seen before. Satellites picked up signals from empty space. Scientists detected energy readings that defied all known physics. In the Zenthari capital, Emperor Zaktul dropped his ceremonial sword when his advisors brought him the news. For 800 years, his family had ruled their empire, based on the assumption that they were the rightful inheritors of Vorthak power. If humans could activate Vorthak technology, everything would change. The Nexari High computer ran probability calculations for 18 straight hours and concluded that this development had a 97.3% chance of ending their civilization as they knew. Yet the Luminar Collective held an emergency art ceremony to process the emotional implications of the news. Their greatest artists wept as they created sculptures representing the end of the galactic order they had known. But Wu knew none of this yet. He sat on the throne, his mind connected to systems across the galaxy, learning to be something he had never imagined he could be. The scared tourist who had snuck into the chamber was gone. In his place sat someone who carried the hopes and fears of an entire galaxy. The real test was just beginning. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours of Wu sitting on the throne, emergency sessions were being held in every major capital. The comfortable order that had existed for 5,000 years was cracking. On the Earth colony world of New Sol, Ambassador Li Gina was having breakfast when her communication device exploded with incoming messages. As Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, she had spent years fighting for basic respect for humanity. Now suddenly every alien government wanted to talk to her. The first message came from the Zenthari Empire. Emperor Zaktul himself appeared on her screen, his yellow eyes blazing with anger. Ambassador Li explained the situation immediately. How is it possible that a human activated Vorthak technology? Before Gina could answer, another call came in from the Nexari Federation. High Computer Techron's massive brain pulsed with agitation behind its clear skull. This development was not predicted in any of our models. We demand full disclosure of human genetic data. Then came the Luminar Collective, their rainbow-skinned representative speaking in harmonious tones that barely hid their fear. The balance of the galaxy has been disturbed. Art cannot flourish under the uncertainty you have created. Gina tried to explain that she knew as little as they did, but no one believed her. How could Earth's ambassador not know about this supposed Vorthak connection? Either she was lying, or Earth's government was dangerously incompetent. Meanwhile, on Kepler Station, security forces surrounded the throne chamber but could not enter. The room was sealed by energy fields that their weapons could not penetrate. Inside, Wu remained connected to the throne, learning secrets that no living being had known for millennia. The station commander, a nervous Nexari named Viltex, tried everything to break through the barriers. Plasma cutters, sonic disruptors, even exotic matter bombs, nothing worked. The throne's defenses were beyond their technology. "Sir," reported his chief engineer, "we're detecting massive energy readings from the chamber. Whatever's happening in there is drawing power from the station's main reactor." "Then shut down the reactor," Viltex ordered. "We tried. The throne has somehow bypassed all our controls. It's feeding directly from the fusion core." As hours passed, the situation grew worse. Reports came in from across the galaxy of ancient installations coming online. On the dead world of Vorthak Prime, buried cities began to glow with power. In the Outer Rim territories, derelict space stations started broadcasting signals. Most disturbing of all, automated shipyards and empty star systems began producing vessels of unknown, designed the first humans to arrive at Kepler Station were scientists and archaeologists who had been studying Vorthak artifacts on other worlds. Dr. Park Hyun, Woo's childhood friend who had become a xenoarchaeologist, rushed to the station as soon as he heard the news. "This is impossible," Park told the gathered researchers as they watched the sealed chamber. "Kim Woo is just a regular guy. He works in an electronics shop. There's nothing special about him." But Dr. Choi Sumi, a geneticist from Seoul University, had been running tests on human DNA samples. "Actually, there might be something. I'm finding genetic markers in humans that don't exist in any other known species. They're dormant, inactive, but they're definitely there." As more humans arrived at the station, strange things began to happen. Human technicians found they could interface with Vorthak technology that had been inert for millennia. Human linguists discovered they could read ancient Vorthak text without translation software. Most remarkably, humans who had never left Earth showed the strongest connections to the alien systems. Yang Minho, a maintenance worker from Busan, accidentally activated a Vorthak medical scanner while trying to fix what he thought was broken alien equipment. The scanner immediately began healing his old work injuries, restoring his damaged knee to perfect condition. Choi Hari, a graduate student studying ancient languages, touched a Vorthak data crystal and suddenly understood the complete history of the Vorthak Empire. The information flowed into her mind like she was remembering her own childhood. News of these incidents spread panic through the established galactic powers. If any human could use Vorthak technology, then humanity was not just another young species. They were potentially the most powerful force in the galaxy. Emergency meetings were held on every major world. The Zenthari military began mobilizing their fleets. The Nexari ran constant calculations, trying to predict how this development would affect galactic stability. The Luminar created desperate artworks pleading for peace and understanding, but fear was stronger than reason. Within days of the awakening, 3 separate alien fleets were heading toward human space. The official reason was investigation and protection, but everyone knew what they really intended. If humans could not be controlled, they would be eliminated. On Earth, President Kim Tae-hyung called an emergency session of the Global Council. The planet's leaders gathered in Geneva, watching reports from across the galaxy with growing alarm. "Are we really descended from these Vorthak aliens?" asked the African Union representative. "The evidence suggests some kind of genetic connection," replied Dr. Song Minji, Earth's chief scientist. "But we don't know what it means or how extensive it is." "What we know," said President Kim grimly, "is that half the galaxy wants to study us and the other half wants to destroy us. We need to prepare for the worst." Back on Kepler Station, Wu finally emerged from his connection with the throne. He had been sitting there for 3 days. His consciousness expanded across galactic networks, learning the true scope of what he had inherited. The knowledge was overwhelming. He now understood technologies that could reshape planets, weapons that could destroy star systems, and governing systems that could unite billions of diverse worlds. But with the knowledge came the weight of responsibility. The throne had shown him the mistakes of the past. Every galactic empire had eventually fallen because its rulers forgot that power should serve the people, not the other way around. The Vorthak themselves had made this mistake, becoming so focused on maintaining order that they forgot to nurture growth and freedom. When security forces finally gained access to the chamber, they found Wu sitting quietly on the throne, tears streaming down his face. He looked older, as if he had aged years in just 3 days. "I understand now," he said to Dr. Park, who was the first to reach him. "The Vorthak didn't want us to repeat their mistakes. They gave us their knowledge, but they also gave us the freedom to choose how to use it." Park helped his friend stand up from the throne. The patterns of light continued to flow across its surface, but more slowly now, as if waiting patiently for Wu's return. "What happens now?" Park asked. Wu looked around the chamber, seeing the frightened faces of the security personnel, the worried expressions of the human scientists, the growing chaos of a galaxy in upheaval. "Now we prove that humans deserve this inheritance," he said. "We show the galaxy that power can be used for something better than conquest." But even as he spoke, alarms sounded throughout the station. The first alien fleet had arrived at the edge of the system. demanding that all humans surrender immediately for processing and evaluation. The test was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Through the throne's connection, Wu could feel the fear and anger of billions of beings across the galaxy. Ancient prejudices and new terrors were combining into a storm that threatened to tear apart everything the galaxy had built. He had the power to stop it all with a thought. The Vorthak weapon systems would respond to his command. He could force peace on the galaxy through overwhelming strength, but that was exactly what the throne was testing him not to do. The hardest choice was not whether to use power, but how to use it wisely. The Zenthari warfleet arrived at Kepler Station like a storm of metal and fury. 50 massive battleships surrounded the station, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Kexrath, the Emperor's most trusted commander, broadcast his demands across all frequencies. Attention, Kepler Station. You will surrender all humans immediately for genetic testing and containment. Any resistance will be met with total destruction. On the station's bridge, Commander Viltex frantically tried to contact the Galactic Council, but communication networks across the galaxy were jammed with emergency traffic. Fear had spread from system to system like a plague. Ancient alliances were breaking down as each species tried to protect itself from the unknown threat of human-controlled Vorthak technology. In the throne chamber, Wu sat connected to the ancient systems, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on him. Through the throne's sensors, he could detect every weapon pointed at the station, every frightened heartbeat of the people trapped inside, every calculation being made by alien computers deciding whether humans should live or die. The throne offered him solutions. Defensive systems that could vaporize the entire Zenthari fleet in seconds. Weapons that could reach across space to cripple their homeworld. Technology that could shut down their ships and leave them helpless in the void. But using such power would prove to the galaxy that humans were exactly what they feared, conquerors, who would use Vorthak technology to dominate others. Kim Wu, Dr. Park said softly, standing beside the throne. The station only has basic shields. If they attack, thousands of people will die. Wu nodded, his eyes still closed, his mind racing through possibilities. I know, but if I destroy their fleet, I become everything the galaxy fears about us. Around the station, more humans were discovering their connection to Vorthak technology. Li Suyong, a young engineer, had accidentally activated an ancient manufacturing unit that began producing medical supplies. The machine created healing devices that worked on any species, automatically adapting to different alien biologies. When injured Zenthari prisoners from a recent skirmish were brought to the medical bay, Suyong did not hesitate. She used the Vorthak healing technology to save their lives, working alongside alien doctors who stared in amazement as wounds that should have been fatal closed in minutes. News of this spread quickly through the station's communication systems. A human was using ancient alien technology not to destroy enemies but to heal them. On the Zenthari flagship, Admiral Kexarath received the report with confusion. She saved our people. Why would they do this if they planned to conquer us? His second-in-command, Captain Velnock, studied the data. Perhaps it is a trick, Admiral. They seek to confuse us before they attack. But doubt was creeping into Kexrath's mind. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen conquerors who healed their enemies. Meanwhile, Choihari had gained access to a Vorthak communication array. The device could translate any language perfectly, even thoughts and emotions that had never been put into words. She began reaching out to frightened alien civilizations across the galaxy, not with threats or demands, but with simple messages of understanding. To the Nexari Federation, she sent mathematical proof showing how human and Nexari technologies could work together to solve long-standing scientific problems. To the Luminar Collective, she transmitted art that combined human creativity with Vorthak design principles, creating beauty that neither species could achieve alone. Each message was the same. We want to share, not conquer. But fear is harder to overcome than hatred. The Zenthari fleet prepared to attack, convinced that any delay would give humans time to deploy even more powerful weapons. The countdown to destruction began. That was when Wu made his choice. Instead of activating Vorthak weapons, he opened the station's docking bays and sent an invitation to every ship in the Zenthari fleet. Come aboard. See what we're really doing here. Admiral Kexrath was stunned. They're inviting us to board their station? This must be a trap. But Captain Velnock had been studying the sensor readings. Admiral, I detect no weapons charging, no defensive preparations. If this is a trap, it is unlike any military strategy I have ever seen. Against all military doctrine, Kexrath decided to accept the invitation. He took a small team aboard the station, expecting to find human soldiers preparing for war. Instead, he found human civilians working alongside alien refugees who had fled to the station seeking safety. In the medical bay, he saw Li Suyong treating wounded beings from a dozen different species. She looked up when he entered, recognized his uniform, and simply said, "Are any of your people hurt? We have medicine that can help." Kexrath had come prepared for battle. He had not prepared for kindness. The admiral was led to the throne chamber where he saw Wu sitting peacefully on the ancient seat of power. The human looked young and tired, nothing like the terrifying conqueror Kexrath had imagined. "You could have destroyed my fleet," Kexrath said bluntly. Wu nodded. "The throne showed me how. It would have been easy. Then why didn't you? Because that's not who we want to be." Through the throne's connection, Wu shared his memories with the Zenthari admiral. Kexrath experienced the truth about human origins, felt the weight of Vorthak knowledge, and understood the test that humanity was facing. "Your people are afraid," Wu said. "I understand that. For 5,000 years you've built your civilizations believing that the Vorthak were gone forever. Now you discover that their power still exists and you don't know what we'll do with it." Kexrath's warrior training warred with what he was experiencing. Everything he had been taught said that power corrupted, that any species with Vorthak technology would inevitably use it for conquest. But the evidence of his own eyes contradicted his training. Humans were using the most advanced technology in the galaxy to heal the sick and help refugees. "What do you want from us?" Kexrath asked. "Partnership," Wu replied. "The Vorthak made a mistake. They tried to rule the galaxy alone, and eventually their empire collapsed from within. They learned too late that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination." As they spoke, reports came in from across the galaxy. More human-activated Vorthak installations were coming online, but instead of producing weapons, they were creating medical supplies, communication networks, and terraforming equipment. Human scientists were sharing their discoveries freely with any species that asked. Dr. Park, monitoring the communications, brought news that changed everything. "Wu, there's something you need to know. We're not the only ones with Vorthak DNA. The throne's deeper scans had revealed the truth. The Vorthak had seeded dozens of worlds with their genetic template. Humans were just the first to awaken, but traces of Vorthak heritage could be found in many species across the galaxy. The potential for accessing this technology existed in Zenthari, Nexari, Luminar, and countless others." "You mean we're all related?" Admiral Kexrath asked in shock. "In a way," Wu confirmed. "The Vorthak didn't just choose humans. They planted the seeds of their legacy throughout the galaxy, hoping that someday all species would work together to build something better than what they had achieved." This revelation spread quickly through the Zenthari fleet and beyond. The idea that they might all be connected to the ancient empire changed how many aliens viewed the situation. Instead of humans being dangerous outsiders, they were potential partners in a shared heritage. But not everyone was ready to accept this new reality. 3 more fleets were approaching Kepler Station. Hardline factions from different species who believed that human power had to be stopped before it could spread. The real test was still coming. And this time, Wu would have to prove that humans could defend themselves and their new allies without becoming the conquerors the galaxy feared. The throne pulsed with energy, ready to provide whatever power he requested. The question was not whether humans could win a war, but whether they could win it in a way that proved they deserved the victory. 6 months after Kim Wu first sat on the throne, the galaxy looked completely different. What had started as a crisis of fear had become a revolution of hope. But not everyone was ready to accept the changes. On Earth, President Kim Tae-hyung walked through the gardens of the United Nations building, now expanded to include representatives from 47 different species. The old UN Security Council had been replaced by the Galactic Cooperation Assembly, where decisions were made not by the strongest nations, but by consensus among all member worlds. But change was never easy, and not everyone welcomed it. In the depths of space, 3 massive fleets approached Earth itself. The Zenthari purist movement, led by General Thakmor, refused to accept that humans could be trusted with Vorthak power. The Nixari Calculation Collective had determined that human unpredictability made them too dangerous to exist. Most surprising of all, a faction of the Luminar had joined them, believing that human influence was destroying the artistic purity of galactic culture. Target the human homeworld, General Thakmor commanded from his flagship. If we remove their breeding population, the Vorthak threat dies with them. The three fleets represented the largest military force assembled since the ancient Vorthak Wars. Over 300 ships, armed with the most advanced weapons their civilizations could produce. Their plan was simple: destroy Earth and scatter humanity across the galaxy where they could be controlled and contained. But as they approached the solar system, they encountered something unexpected. Earth was protected not by human weapons, but by ships from every species in the galaxy. Former enemies stood side by side in defense of the world that had changed everything. Admiral Kexrath, now commanding the Zenthari 7th Fleet, opened communication channels to all the approaching ships. This is Admiral Kexrath of the Zenthari Empire. I stand with Earth. Any attack on this world is an attack on the Galactic Cooperation Assembly. You have been contaminated by human influence, General Thakmor replied. Stand aside or be destroyed with them. I have been educated by human example, Kexrath responded, and I will not stand aside. The defense fleet was impressive but outnumbered. Logic suggested that Earth's defenders would be defeated, that humanity's brief moment of galactic importance would end in fire and destruction. That was when Wu made his final choice as the heir to Vorthak power. From Kepler Station, now the unofficial capital of the new galactic order, Wu connected to communication networks across known space. Every inhabited world, every ship, every space station received the same signal simultaneously. But instead of using Vorthak weapons to destroy the attacking fleets, Wu did something unprecedented. He opened the complete Vorthak historical database to every being in the galaxy. Suddenly, every alien consciousness experienced the full history of galactic civilization. They felt the rise and fall of a dozen great empires. They witnessed the mistakes that led to war, the pride that caused destruction, the fear that divided species against each other. General Thakmor, prepared to order the attack on Earth, found his mind flooded with memories of Zenthari history that he had never learned. He saw how his own people had once been refugees, saved by the compassion of strangers. He experienced the gradual corruption that had turned the mighty Zenthari Empire into something his ancestors would not recognize. The Nixari fleet commanders, their logical minds overwhelmed by emotional truths they had never calculated, understood for the first time that their obsession with prediction and control had blinded them to the beauty of uncertainty and growth. The Luminar artists, confronted with the complete artistic heritage of the galaxy, realized that their pursuit of pure beauty had become a cage that prevented them from creating anything truly new. Across the galaxy, on every world, beings stopped what they were doing and stared in wonder at the shared history they had never known. Ancient grudges that had lasted millennia suddenly seemed petty when viewed against the vast scope of galactic time. Species that had considered themselves enemies discovered that they were all part of the same story. The attacking fleets powered down their weapons not out of fear, but out of understanding. How? General Thakmor whispered over the communication channels. How did you show us all of this without destroying our minds? From Earth, Wu's voice reached every ship in the system. Because the Vorthak learned something in their final years that took them 10,000 years to understand. True power is not the ability to force others to obey you. True power is the ability to help others become their best selves. The battle that everyone expected never happened. Instead, something unprecedented occurred. Representatives from every fleet, including the attacking forces, requested permission to land on Earth and see for themselves what humanity had built. They found a world transformed. Cities that had once been centers of human industry now housed beings from dozens of species, all working together on projects that no single civilization could have accomplished alone. Zenthari engineers and human architects were designing space habitats that could support any form of life. Nixari computers and Luminar artists were creating beauty that engaged both logic and emotion. Most importantly, they found humans doing what they did best: adapting, learning, and bringing out the best in others. Yang Minho, The maintenance worker who had accidentally activated Vorthak medical technology now ran a hospital where alien and human doctors worked side by side. His simple act of healing former enemies had grown into a galaxy-wide medical network that shared cures and treatments freely among all species. Choi Hari, the student who had gained access to Vorthak communication arrays, had become the galaxy's first universal translator, not just of languages but of cultures and concepts. She helped species understand each other in ways that went far beyond mere words. Dr. Park, Wu's childhood friend, led mixed-species archaeological teams that were uncovering Vorthak sites across the galaxy. But instead of seeking weapons or technology, they were finding schools, hospitals, and art galleries. The evidence showed that even the galaxy's greatest empire had learned in the end that creativity and compassion were more valuable than conquest. General Tuckmore, walking through the halls of the new Galactic Assembly, stopped before a statue that took his breath away. It was a luminar artwork depicting the moment when Wu first sat on the throne, but it was created in collaboration with Zenthari metalworkers and powered by Nexari computational art. The result was something that no single species could have imagined. "This is what you chose instead of ruling us," he said to Wu, who was giving him a personal tour of the facility. "This is what we chose to build together," Wu corrected. "The throne gave me the power to rule the galaxy, but it also showed me that ruling and leading are very different things." A year after the awakening, Wu stepped down from active connection with the throne. The ancient seat of power remained on Kepler Station, but it was no longer the center of galactic government. Instead, it served as a reminder and a teacher, available to anyone who wanted to understand the lessons of history. The new galactic government was based not on the power of any single species, but on cooperation and mutual benefit. Decisions were made by consensus when possible, by careful negotiation when necessary. It was messy, complicated, and sometimes frustratingly slow, but it worked. Lee Gina, now the first human Secretary General of the Galactic Assembly, often looked out at the chamber where representatives from 200 species debated issues that affected billions of beings. It was chaotic compared to the orderly dictatorship that the Vorthak had created. But it was also alive with possibility. Choi Yunji, Wu's sister and now Earth's chief cultural liaison, oversaw exchange programs that were slowly healing wounds that had festered for millennia. Young beings from different species grew up together, learning that their differences were sources of strength rather than reasons for conflict. And Kim Wu? He returned to Earth and became a teacher in a small school where human and alien children learned together. His students often asked him what it was like to have the power to rule the galaxy. "I learned," he would tell them, "that the beings who are worthy of power are usually the ones who don't want it. And the most important lesson of all is that true strength comes not from what you can force others to do, but from what you can inspire them to become." The throne remained on Kepler Station, its patterns of light flowing slowly across the ancient stone. Sometimes visitors would ask if they could sit on it, hoping to gain wisdom or power. The answer was always the same. The throne doesn't give you anything you don't already have inside yourself. The real question is not whether you can handle power, but whether you can handle the responsibility that comes with it. The test never ended. Every day brought new choices, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that the galaxy's diverse species could work together. There were failures and setbacks, arguments and misunderstandings, but there was also hope, and in the end, that made all the difference. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear or dominated by the strongest. It was guided by the principle that had taken the Vorthak 10,000 years to learn, and had cost them their empire to understand. The greatest civilizations are not built by those who seek power over others, but by those who use their power to lift others up.